There we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this Tuesday afternoon's PhD support group meeting. I'm Dr. Leni Liebenberg, and today the UKZN Student Support Services team joins us again, and they'll be hosting another session in the series focused on the roles of health and wellness on our performance. The series featured Kelsey Nightingale, who focused on managing mental health in the workplace, Christy Greener, who discussed the wellness continuum. Last week, we had Charlene Cody discussing how to manage stress and burnout and fatigue. And today, Suzanne Stokes, an educational psychologist from the SSS team, will lead the discussion about bullying, another issue very relevant to our success in the academic environment, in our work environment, and even in our personal capacity. So before we begin, just a reminder that this is a very, very informal session. So please feel free to place any comments or questions in the chat box, raise your hand, use your emoticons, your reaction icons. We like that, presenters like that, community members like that. This is an interactive, supportive session. So, right, with that, I'll hand over to Suzanne Stokes. Welcome to you and the team, and thank you for taking the time out to meet with us today, Sue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lynn, and thank you everybody for joining in this wonderful topic. I think, we don't have enough conversations about this topic. Just for bandwidth purposes, I know that I am struggling a little bit with bandwidth. I'm going to be switching off my video. Do engage with us in the chat space. It is really awesome to keep that conversation going. If something like resonates with you, something is like a wow moment, or you just want to respond because it's, you want to respond, use those reactions, emojis, etc. So we know that incidences of bullying is so rife in our day and age. And the purpose of today's contact is to assist, you in recognizing what constitutes bullying, especially within the workplace, and what you can do about it. And this topic also aims to motivate you to advocate against bullying and to stand up. So we've seen in research a report of 77.8% of South Africans say they've experienced some form of victimization during their careers. This was determined in an internet survey in 2000. Since then, bullying has evolved and has filtered into the cyberspaces, and we still continue to see that bullying is persistent, it's prolonged, and happens over a period of time. It is humiliating, it's damaging, vindictive, and cruel, and can be overt or covert with a definite impact on the well-being of the victim. Sometimes people confuse conflict and bullying, and this figure may not be entirely reliable because of that. However, new research indicates that workplace bullying is over 20%, especially in the health sector, than reported. So
Sorry, Sue, I was just checking whether you've changed the slide.
I've changed it now. Can you see the 75%?
Now it's 25. Yes, good.
So workplace bullying is far more common than many suspect. So another research has shown that 75% of employees have either personally experienced or witnessed some form of workplace misconduct during their working lives. Another study had said 58% of staff at a local university's health science faculty has reported to being bullied more than once. Another study, 64% of respondents observed it happening to others. So there's major reports of bullying incidences within the workplace. And we see that one research study has defined bullying as one unwanted action that causes offense or distress to others. And our definition will also inform how the bullying is reported and in what category bullying is reported in. So in finding a clear definition of what bullying is, I've gone to the Constitution, our Employment Equity Act, but I've also gone to a poem that represents both what it is and its impact. So bullying, the bully, spreading unhappiness wherever he goes. The victim, I'm so tired, when will it end? The bystander, the power is in my hand. I have been all three. So I think this is such an impactful poem by Queenie, Gloria, and Naveel, where we see the evolution of bullying, the impact, the psychological distress, and the long-term influences thereof. Different forms of bullying are present. Both men and women can commit bullying, and the victims of bullying are both males and females. And there's no clear cut as to what it is, how it is experienced, but we know that it is something that we would have to address. It has severe negative effects. And I think knowing that bullying is ever evolving and is now filtering into cyberbullying, it is something that has complications within both the legal sphere in defining what it is and our rights as individuals. So we know, according to the Constitution and policies, we know that bullying can be labeled as discrimination. It is a criminal offense and has a significant impact on the employee, both in their productivity and efficiency. And we see this far reaching into the impact in our mental health and well-being, and creeps into our personal spaces when we're not in the workplace. So I'm releasing a poll. Feel free to respond to the poll. It would really be great. I'm going to be referring to the poll, during the presentation. I've asked questions on, have you ever been bullied? How were you bullied? Have you ever bullied anyone? On a scale of 1 to 10, how present it is here within our space at UKZN? Have you ever been afraid to attend or engage in social spaces because of bullying? And I've provided some scenarios around, what you would regard as bullying and whether or not you would like to advocate against bullying. And these are things that I will be referring to during the presentation. This is a psychoeducational talk. At any time, should you wish to contact your support team because you feel you're a victim of bullying or you are a perpetrator or someone that does bully, please do contact us. You can contact us on the toll-free line on 0800 0017. It's 080-080-0017. I'll pop that into the chat space. Sorry, I got a little distracted from the way they wrote it. So it's 080-0017. Or you can contact us on chs.sss@ukzn.ac.za and we will assist you. So yeah, let's go back. Bullying is a criminal act. Bullying that involves physical violence can sometimes be seriously enough to constitute a criminal act. And this is the challenge. People define bullying so differently, and cases that are seen as, oh, it's just bullying, are in actual fact criminal acts. It's important to understand the difference between what is a criminal offense and a criminal act, and what is identified and how it is addressed. Bullying is an activity that creates fear and intimidation in the victim or group of victims. You get physical bullying that involves kicking and shoving and punching. And we tend to see this a little far less in the workplace, but it does happen. And incidents of violence can be classified as bullying. And we do see that sometimes this is dealt with at work and at times seldom addressed. Bullying can be classified as a criminal act if it involves, I do apologize, if it involves serious assault. So again, it's involving physical pain. But this is the problem. This is the challenge. Our policies and our constitution is in contradiction as to what is bullying. Our workplace policies should regard all forms of bullying as a form of criminal act as per the constitution. So on the screen, I speak of sharing of videos of bullying is a criminal offense. Sharing pictures that depict incidences of bullying, humiliation, shaming, is a criminal offense. Bullying is a form of violence, and violence is a criminal act. If you witness an incident of bullying and do nothing about it, you are just as guilty as the perpetrator. And these are things that we're trying to make sense of, especially within the workplace. And I'm going to do a quick share of just a small snippet of an interview on bullying in the workplace. I'm going to share with you the link as well, so that you have reference to the video. It is an ENCA snippet on bullying in the workplace. And I'm just going to share the first 3 minutes. It's really an interesting share. And just let me know if you're able to hear it.
Good morning, and thank you for making the time.
We can hear it.
Said that it's very subtle. You can't easily pick it up, and oftentimes the victim isn't aware that they actually are being bullied. What are the signs to look for?
Absolutely. I think, you've kind of raised a really great point in that when people think of bullying, you kind of think, playground bullying, where it's very overt, it's aggressive, it's kind of open. But in the workplace, it happens in a more subtle manner. So some of the signs of workplace bullying, which people are not aware of, is things like someone giving you an unreasonable amount of work, unreasonable amount of deadlines, particularly where there's no justification for it from a business perspective. It's things like isolating you. So for example, a bully might, forget, for example, to invite you to particular meetings. They might exclude you from particular tasks which you should be included in. It's things like withholding information that you're required to do your job. So basically trying to sabotage your tasks or your output. It could also be feeding you the wrong information, obviously in an effort to sabotage you. Stealing credit for your work, that's also part of bullying. Ignoring, funny enough, is also a form of bullying. So a bully might, for example, come into a room and greet everybody else but ignore you, or not make eye contact
That's
with
a form
you in
of
a meeting.
bullying.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. Talk to us about how you address bullying then, particularly if your boss is involved.
Yeah, I think one thing actually, the Workplace Bullying Institute in the US actually found that 70% of bullies are actually someone who is higher up, so a manager or maybe a manager above that. So in many cases, there are a lot of power dynamics that come to play, which actually then makes it difficult to confront, particularly if it's someone, that has authority over you. So in terms of what should you do, if you kind of come across, or if you actually realize that you are being bullied. So if you feel comfortable and if you feel safe, you may confront the bully, but that is not recommended if, for example, you might not feel safe and it might actually result, in the bullying, getting worse, or you being actually further victimized in that regard. So what you can then do is the law actually, bullying falls under harassment, in the Employment Equity Act. So you are actually able to report it to your Human Resources Department, to a union if you've got a union within your workplace, and failing which you can actually take the case to the CCMA if your organization has not sort of, taken adequate steps in order to resolve it. And in fact, some employers actually can be held to account for not creating a safe environment for a person that's being bullied, particularly if the person can prove that they've brought it to their attention but they've not taken adequate steps.
You're getting into a very interesting area there where you talk about the employer's responsibility. But before I get into that, how do you go about gathering evidence, given that it is very subtle, as we started out explaining this issue of bullying? How do you gather evidence?
Yeah, so first and foremost, as is with any form of sort of, harassment or grievance, document everything. So dates, times, what was said, what was done, particularly if you've got, some physical evidence. Maybe it was, it happened in an email. So document everything so that at least...
Print out those emails.
Yes, exactly. Print out the emails if they are, so that at least, when you take it, you sort of have facts, you've got dates, you've kind of have a timeline on it. Witnesses is a bit of a tricky one because sometimes there are people around you that may observe this behavior, but they might not always be willing to sort of come forward and formally sort of, formally state that, they have observed it. So if you've got people who have witnessed, who are willing to come forward, that's something that you can use. But the reality is many people do not actually sort of want to formally involve themselves in such a matter.
Talk to us.
So I'm just going to quickly do a new share. So we've seen that in that video, she spoke a lot about, the types of bullying and how, the examples of workplace bullying. And we see that some of the behaviors Can even be things like practical jokes, threats, humiliation, unjust criticism, excessive performance monitoring. And she spoke a little bit about what it is that you can start doing if you are a victim of bullying, how you can go about, documenting these experiences so that we can go and address these things. She spoke about the different ways in which bullying can be done, overt and covert kind of ways. And I think it is so important that we consciously make an effort to, say, that this is not okay. Other examples of workplace bullying: talking to someone behind their back, interrupting others while they're speaking, flaunting status of authority, belittling someone's opinion, failing to return phone calls or respond to memos. And, this list is quite long, and I'm sure that you guys can even start sharing some of your own experiences of bullying. So I'm wondering if you would like to, and if you want to share experiences or things that you've observed, you can do that anonymously. You can do a direct post to me or to one of my colleagues or to Dr. Len, and we can speak about, these examples. Other examples can be ridicule, teasing, or just the use of sarcasm. It can even be overloading a person with work as a form of punishment, refusing a person's rights or their privileges, intimidation, interfering with work, and completing work tasks. And I think this is one of the things that, it's sometimes we try and rationalize and say, well, it's just making light or a joke or things, but we know that some of these things are, inappropriate and should not occur. So let's take one step back, the making of a bully. How do bullies become bullies? Bullying, harassment, unfair working conditions kind of influences each other and are contributing factors and are often cyclical or connected. So we see that bullies sometimes behave in such a way that we even question at times, is this actual bullying? Other times it might be outright clear. Bullies become bullies because of the experiences that they have themselves been exposed to. So bullying is a form of violence. Bullies create fear in their victims, either because they themselves are experiencing feelings of disempowerment in another relationship, or because they have learned that this intimidating behavior always gets them what they want. So bullies feed on perhaps the fear. They play power games, use intimidation tactics to threaten and create an atmosphere of terror. Bullying can be physical, psychological, verbal, mob bullying, or cyberbullying. And these are reasons why some people would bully. Every bully does not have to have the same background. Understanding the possible reasons and factors behind the behavior can help advocate against bullying and encourage someone to ask for help, whether it is the victim or the perpetrator. So I think it is important to understand there are many ways in which we, end up being bullied or bullying persons, but there should never be any reason why someone would bully. There should never be a reason. We tend to try and rationalize and say, oh, shame, this person had a difficult upbringing, or they just asserting their power. There should never be a reason. We see this evolving from the development of their stereotypes and prejudices, which form when they were young, and it shapes their worldview. And many bullies would then respond from that perspective. It may be due to a need to exert power and control. Some of the reasons for bullying take place in our workplace. It gets, is reinforced by other factors and values. Things like homophobia, habit of using abusive and violent language, and just gets reinforced in certain spaces. We've got issues of xenophobia, and within South Africa, we tend to see a lot of these incidences play out because of the diverse cultures that we have in spaces. It could even be because of the color of our skin, our culture, our religious beliefs, perhaps even just jealousy. wanting to exclude others because of that being different to us. Perhaps they're smaller than us, or they smell different. Perhaps it's an idea of that boys are better than girls. There are many reasons why, bullying occurs, and there's no one reason. But what we do know is that bullying happens because of a cycle. And we've got this idea that violence begets violence, and we can stop the cycle. Dr. Shekar spoke last year quite nicely about how the victim, turns into a victimizer, or how the bully, once bullied becomes the bully. And one of the things that I'm trying to advocate today is reaching out for help to stop that cycle, even if it is just within you and your response on how you're addressing situations. So, when we're not receiving the assistance we deserve, or reach out for not reporting, there's no reconciliation. So maybe we're addressing it with the bully and there's no resolve, or we're not having to heal from the experiences, or we're just continuously internalizing, blaming ourselves, sitting with the guilt, the shame associated with those experiences, not having the appropriate coping skills, sets us up for that opportunity to become a bully one day, and that's what we want to nip. This is why bullies happen, because of past experiences, because not having had an opportunity to have that sense of healing. And I think that's in a nutshell, something that we need to challenge. I see that there is a chat space. So the definition is very broad, and I completely agree. Some of this sounds like it could be a result of personality issues. Absolutely. Passive aggressive behavior, unintended consequences of people management. How can one differentiate this between this and malicious acts? That's such a very good question. And I think it all narrows down to the reason for the act. Why is someone doing that? Is that because of an underlying psychopath personality, or is this someone that's responding in this way because this is how they're trying to control the situation? I think we'll definitely speak a lot more on that question. Such a good question. So not only do bullied victims have to continue in working in a relationship where the bullying took place, the victim does tend to experience bouts of depression, stress, anxiety, even possibly post-traumatic stress disorder, and even a plethora of physical illnesses as a result of the bullying. Bullying is very difficult for anyone to deal with. And I think that the impact even is seen in workplace performance, attendance, perhaps even turnover of staff in those environments where bullying is rife. If no timely intervention occurs during the bullying, we see the severe psychological problems. And I'm going to share a slide of all, the greater impact that it has on an individual. We see a low morale, a lowered self-esteem, impact on the victim. So let's go to that slide. So we see that, in research, they speak a lot about, the impact that it has on an individual of an institution. There are great costs, loss of, I'm just thinking out loud here, with the impact of, like not having tasks done, I'm taking a moment just to think. So sorry. I think, just knowing that the stress impacts the person, it mounts up, it increases in health issues, it decreases productivity, results in higher absenteeism. And we tend to see that the consequences are far reaching, use of substances, self-harm, impact on sleeping, on eating habits, and it influences the well-being of an individual and impacts the morale of that person. So yeah, the impact of bullying is very difficult for anyone to deal with. It makes you feel afraid. It makes you feel degraded. It often makes a person feel like they are worthless. And unfortunately, bullying also impacts our interest in doing things that we enjoy. We feel disinterested, worthless, demotivated, sad, and sometimes we prefer to isolate ourselves. We tend to worry often about finding ourselves in the same situation where we may be picked on, victimized, or bullied. And you may even find yourself asking if you could do anything right. Self-doubt creeps in, and you have this constant withdrawal because this has become a norm for you. The long-term exposure of a stressful situation, we know will have the same influence on our health, on mental health and wellness, on our resilience to bounce back in these difficult situations. You end up sitting with this label of I'm the victim, coupled with shame, regret, and guilt. And those are the things that stop you from reaching out for help. So what can I do if I'm bullied? So we know with the challenges in terms of our policies, our constitutions, our Employment Act, our policies within the workplace, within South Africa, we need to create this awareness and have to deal with this. The country is in dire need of like a uniform approach to workplace bullying. Bullying is an abuse of power. It is an action that's planned, calculated, it's intended to hurt, and is repeated over and over again. So as an institution, we do stand up, we do ask, if you are being bullied, reach out for help. If you are bullied, you must, share your experiences and fears with another person who may help. And it is common for victims to feel that it is their fault and to begin to lose the confidence in themselves. Many victims feel this, but it is not the victim's fault. And there is no need to feel ashamed. I think it is so important to ask for help to manage a situation. And this is not an easy situation to manage. We find that we tend to isolate ourselves in these instances that we find ourselves in. So avoid isolating yourself and speak up. Another piece of research that was found was where they spoke about bullying being 4 times more prevalent than sexual harassment in the workplace. So I think, just knowing that it's definitely underreported. It is not addressed as much as we would want it to be. So I think we need to create, measures for victims who are being bullied and for the perpetrator to reach out for help so that we can change this within the workplace. I think it starts with creating an anti-bullying kind of strategy within our workspaces, eliminate bullying, it provides us with an opportunity to eliminate bullying within the workplace. It also creates education amongst ourselves. It provides, a procedure on how we can deal with bullying. It also prevents its reoccurrence. And I think that is one of the things that we need to, tackle is if it happens once, it's once too many. We need to communicate amongst ourselves what is appropriate, what needs to be addressed, and how to eliminate these incidences. So what can you do if you're needing support as a victim of bullying or a perpetrator? Speak to people, reach out for help. Let's create an environment where it is comfortable for you to say, I need assistance. I think it is so important to know that you also have the HR within the university and within, I'm trying to think, within your Employment Equity Act, there are processes, there are due processes that we can follow. And CCMA is also available to assist further. So in a nutshell, if you do need any support, we do have contact lines for you where you can speak about your incidences. We have student support services that is available to work through with you on the events, as well as for the perpetrator and the victim. We have the SADAG crisis lines, Lifeline, CIPLA, as well as Higher Health. We also have our on-site RMS, as well as the panic button in the event that situations like this occurs. And I will be sharing in a moment an amazing help guide that I found that speaks to surviving the bully at work. And I'm going to be sharing that in the chat space as well as on email. And I think in that workbook, it would definitely give you a lot more strategies on how you can survive the bully at work. And when should we take bullying seriously? And this is my last slide that I'm going to be speaking about this, and then I'm going to open up the conversation and look at the poll results. But bullying must always be taken seriously and never ignored. Some people believe that bullying builds character. It actually breaks us down and can cause the mental health impacts, such as depression, long-term psychological damage, and even results in suicide. It is advisable that we train each other on what constitutes bullying and what should we do if it occurs. I think as employers, we have the responsibility to take active steps to prevent bullying, and they may not, and that we should not simply just sit back and wait for something to, happen as a result thereof. So ensure that we give enough attention to those events, whether you are someone that's observing an event, a victim, or a policyholder. I think it is so important that we prevent this workplace violence and we put into strategies and programs in place to address these aspects. So I'm just going to quickly share the link of the video, the ENCA interview of bullying in the workplace. I've put that there, and I am going to be sharing with you the workbook. I'm just quickly looking for it on, I see I've got to do it through OneDrive, but I'm going to also share the link. Let me quickly find the direct link for it for you. Here we go. I'm going to share the workbook for you in the chat space. Survive bullying in South Africa. So it's really nice, a workbook. It speaks to surviving the bully in the workplace. See, I shared the link of the worktrauma.org. I'm just quickly getting the PDF link for you. There we go. I found the PDF link. So it is designed by a psychologist that specializes in trauma and specifically within the workplace traumas. And she has really nice ideas on how you can actually address this. And I'm going to do a quick screen share of that. Or she speaks about strategies on documenting, diarizing the events, confronting the bullying, speaking about bullying to the line manager, going through the grievance procedures, and reaching out for assistance and help. She also gives you a great idea on what happens when it continues and how you can survive, bouncing back, going through, reaching out for help from that traumatic experience. So I do hope that you find resources quite helpful as well, that I have shared with you in today's conversation. I know that it was quite a quick conversation, but I do want to open the space for more of a practical conversation in terms of bullying within the workplace. And I see we've had 60% of our participants completing the survey. So I'll just give you guys just another minute to go and complete the survey. But while I give you a moment to complete the survey, we see that have you ever been bullied? 31% have said a lot, and 35% have said sometimes. So we know that we have either been, experiencing quite a bit of bullying, whether it is within the workplace, at home, or growing up when we were at school. We all have somewhat been exposed to some form of bullying. And 85%, and this is so powerful, have responded to being emotionally bullied, 12% physically, 15% social, 8% financial, 8% sexual, and 15% I was not bullied. So I just want to appreciate you all for your honesty and for being so open with your bullying experiences. I also have the question of, have you ever bullied anyone? So I want to appreciate again the honesty. 15% have reported saying yes. And as much as there is assistance and help for the victim, there is also assistance and help for the perpetrator. On a scale of 1 to 10, how prevalent is bullying at UKZN? 27% have said somewhat, 31% have said a little, 4% have said a lot, with 8 saying quite a bit and not as much. So it is quite a range of scales. So I'm going to end the poll there so you can have a look at the results while I am going through. You will also see your response to the questions. And I am going to question 5. Have you ever been afraid to attend or engage in social spaces because of bullying? And this is kind of what we see. The isolation kind of sets in, the avoidance of spaces where incidences of bullying can occur. And we see that 38% have responded to rather avoiding or choosing to avoid social spaces because of that bullying. And it's definitely a coping strategy in dealing with the space, dealing with the bullying. But it's definitely, encouraging the isolation and the withdrawal. And we don't tend to have the assistance or the help that we need. I've shared in question 6, and I want to speak a little bit more about this, to the scenarios you regard as bullying. And I want to speak to all of those scenarios are scenarios that are regarded as bullying, whether it is rumors at work or at home, or rumors in general is a form of bullying. Calling names, putting her on texts, forcing you to give them their things, whether it is like, notes, or, you're forcing people to attend meetings on your behalf, that kind of stuff. Those are incidences of bullying. Social media is definitely a new space of that's allowed bullying to occur. And, just hearing of a rumor, you tend to think that rumors are true. And that's kind of like the psychological bullying, the emotional bullying that occurs. Your supervisor or a tutor might say things such as, "Oh, you should know this, you're stupid." And we tend to see this a lot occurring in a lot of the spaces, and or something similar thereof. And that is a form of verbal abuse. Being teased or sarcasm used in spaces, and even though it is to lighten the mood, those are incidences of bullying. So all scenarios in the question 6 are regarded as bullying. We should not stand for things such as name calling, teasing, victimization, rumors, and being forced to do things. So would you like to advocate against bullying? And we have a total of 92% saying yes. So I think the best place to start in advocating against bullying is definitely, starting off with conversations like these, whether it is a conversation in a workshop or in the tea room, or within meetings to speak about what is it that we are going to do. I think it is so important that we start off knowing what we are standing up for. I think it is so important to know that you can reach out for help. If you're a victim or a perpetrator, knowing that bullying can hurt no matter what form it is, just be conscious that there is assistance and guidance and help for you. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to hop back into the chat space. I know I've spoken quite a bit. Dr. Lane says there are benefits to promoting your professional persona online. Absolutely. And I think the online space is definitely a good space where you can advocate for, community awareness of certain things, perhaps sharing, certain findings and successes. And it does, people do go and like you use the words trolling and bullying and victimizing, they do go onto these spaces and have, things that they share that are untruths, and they do, kind of verbally abuse us in these spaces. So Dr. Lane continues to say, but trolling and bullying is a major deterrent to accessing the benefits of social media to career progression. Completely agree. How should cyberbullying be managed? Should we ignore? Do we report? Do we engage? How best to engage without jeopardizing your career and reputation? So first rule of thumb when it comes to cyberbullying, whether it's addressing a troll, is don't engage. It kind of adds fuel to the fire, but do report there are measures in place on social media where you can report the bully, whether it is a spammer or a troll or, inciting violence or whatever it is that's going on. Use the measures in place on social media to report. It is difficult to ignore. I mean, the trolls kind of like warm you up, you're ready for a fight. So don't get stuck into the routine, into the cycle of I'm going to do to you what you've done to me. And that's where that cycle of bullying happens, like you start catching yourself being the bully in that situation. I agree, this online space has many benefits, and incidences of cyberbullying definitely deters us from making the most of it. So have a plan in place of how you are going to address, trolls if they arrive. What is it that you're wanting to focus on? You can block them, know how to block them, know what is within your disposal to reduce those incidences. So how should cyberbullying be managed? I think, have your own strategy, speak to someone when these things occur, journal about it. I think they're definitely life lessons that are really important to reflect on. And figure out a way of how you can heal from these instances, as opposed to responding and getting stuck in that cycle. I don't know if my colleagues or anyone else would like to share. Perhaps someone has a lived experience of cyberbullying that they would like to share. I know it is quite a personal experience. I do tend to see it a lot happening, and the host of a lot of these or the main posts of of that social post will always encourage, don't respond to a troll. It's definitely not worth the energy and the psychological trauma that goes with it, I think. And reaching out for help when it does occur, because it does encourage the self-doubt. And I do hope that I've not missed anything specific, but there are impacts, psychological, emotional, and mental health impacts when trolling or cyberbullying occurs. So I'm just quickly having a look at if any of my colleagues would like to share anything, or anyone else.
So sorry, it's Miss. So I was quite curious when I saw the poll, and thank you for such an amazing presentation. And most of us said no when the question came about, have we ever bullied? You know, have we ever bullied somebody else? And I think that maybe if we just take a moment to think about this, and I think sometimes we look at bullying in the extreme sense of the word, but very often it's sometimes just wanting to have your way in a conversation, or talking down to a younger person, or even an elder person, you're making demands. In that kind of a subtle way, it actually can be an expression of bullying. And I think sometimes we don't really recognize that, yes, we also can and could have been, a perpetrator of bullying.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I do think, that's where, our own reflections and our reflective journals come so in hand in terms of making those small changes that we see being better than what we were than yesterday. It's like, I want to be more compassionate, kinder. And this is where it starts. It's evaluating your own responses to everyday situations, how you would respond to, someone in traffic that cuts you off. Perhaps the cashier at your local shop. How do you respond there? And it's building those values of care and kindness. I do hope that this conversation kind of changes our approaches in everyday life, not just within the workplace, but it starts, in just with these small changes. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Willie. And I do agree. We tend to have an oversight in terms of our own behavior and how it can be regarded. And I think that's what I was trying to share in the beginning. How do we really define what does it mean to bully? Thank you. And I noticed all the emojis and reactions. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else would like to share? Maybe speak about, what stood out for you. What was a wow moment? And I think while we look at the chat space, I think for me was the reporting of incidences of bullying. In the research that I did, I never realized that, between a range of 58 to 77.8% has been found in terms of either witnessing or experiencing workplace bullying. And bullying happens everywhere, top down, bottom up, so with subordinates and line managers, and the other way around, line managers with subordinates, and within peers and colleagues. Bullying doesn't favor anyone, whether you're male or female, regardless of your social status and standing. Bullying doesn't choose. And so I just want to quickly share that poem again as we conclude the conversation, if there isn't anything else that we would like to.
So there is a question in the chat box by
Nice.
Lufunda. Shall I read it, or can you see it?
Got it. Okay. So I think in a highly functional environment, this definition of bullying may significantly overlap with the genuine demand to meet targets. I'm not sure of where to draw the line. This is especially true in busy trauma centers where delays and mistakes may condemn a patient to death. Surgeons in the house. And I think when I looked at, in preparing for this presentation, I definitely looked at, the health sciences field, the medical fields, where, there is a risk of, where a patient's demise, definitely. And I think the victimization, the bullying, the wanting to control situations, and how we're responding to those situations definitely are rife. So I'm wondering if anyone would like to respond to Lufunda Where do we draw this line? I know where we can start, and it's having these conversations. What can we do? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable?
Hello, may I speak and just shed some light?
Please do. Thank you so much, Lufunda.
Yeah, I'm looking at how we train, especially as surgeons, and particularly the guys in busy trauma centers like emergency physicians and all those, and even our medical students. I think sometimes when you're complacent, it becomes a mess. This is just my personal opinion. But what I've noticed is if you go into theater and find surgeons operating, I should believe there's a lot of bullying that goes on in there. But you see, they don't see it as bullying. They see it as jokes and giving instruction because there has to be a leader. And because that's how you're trained to get things done, it becomes normal. And I think that's not correct. But there are situations where there has to be a leader and they love to shout for things to get done. And sometimes people just walk, they drag their feet and things like that. I think it becomes very difficult not to raise your voice or not to give stern instruction and things and other such related things. So I'm not sure in that environment, I have noticed, I think it's going to be difficult if we define bullying the way we have, because I think it encompasses almost everything that's unpleasant. Some people, I think they learn by maybe with a little whip. I'll give you an example. The pediatricians are very nice people, and the physicians are often very nice people. And as surgeons, we are shambled for our behavior. But I think it also comes from how we handle situations. We run and we make sure things are done. We only have a couple of minutes to save that patient. And if in that environment you are not taking charge and you are not you're not firm, it becomes a mess. Trust me. So for me, it's a little. I'm a little disturbed. I don't know what to do in those environments. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Dr.
Dr.
The other surgeons feel. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks
no, it's such a pleasure. And I think you're speaking about something so important. It's the culture, and Dr. Colleen just also referred to it. It's traditional. It's what is the norm. It's what's been done historically, and these changes that we're wanting to see and that should happen are systemic. Prof. Eunice spoke about, this being a management strategy that, it needs to, there has to be significant shifts in making these changes. And it starts with us. It starts with us having these conversations. How do we change traditions? I think, if we can respond differently to those situations, as opposed to adding fuel to the fire or taking people to task to say, this is quite inappropriate. Prof. Eunice says, I think we are justifying bullying by making one job important. It's about how you treat people. Absolutely. Dr. Len says, I think there can be differences between bullying and in the techniques of assertiveness in instruction. And those are the things that we can address, like what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. And it's just seconded by everybody else. Bullying is intentionally done, and I could not have agreed with you more. There is a intention to belittle, to make someone feel lesser than. Thank you so much for this conversation. And Dr. Lufundo, thank you so much for sharing your lived experience. And everybody else that is having a conversation here in the chat space. So absolutely. Where power over the other is involved. Absolutely. Okay.
So could I just comment on the seminar itself?
Please do.
Look, what was an eye-opener for me during this presentation was the various definitions of bullying. Now, I must admit, I wasn't aware of some of the various forms of bullying that were portrayed here. And I find myself now, stressed out, going through my past and my current situations and trying to identify instances of bullying that I actually rationalized away or that I wasn't actually aware of. And Bully touched on it earlier. And even more stressful is me sitting here going through my past behaviors and trying to ensure that I was not a perpetrator, especially in the subtle ways that were mentioned here, like excluding someone, isolating someone, embarrassing somebody, belittling somebody. And I think that was such an important concept from the seminar, this awareness of what bullying is, how to prevent it and how to manage it. So thank you so much for all the content and the discussion throughout the session. It has really hit home to me. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one here. So thanks. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Lynn. And thank you everybody for sharing. And I think, and just being here, I think, reflecting back on our own past experiences is that first step to making the change that we want to see within ourselves, and not be, one of those that adds to the workplace tension that we don't want to see. And I think being kind and compassionate to yourself first, that's where it starts. Taking accountability. Okay, so I was maybe a little more sarcastic than what I should have, and learning from that experience and being a little more mindful as to the things we say, the things that we do and not do. So if you want to reach out for help, Student Support Services is here, whether or not you're a victim or a perpetrator or an observer. So I just want to appreciate you all for joining. So thank you, everybody. Dr. Lynn, over to you. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Look, thank you so much. And I've just expressed my sincere thanks to Suzanne and the team. Thank you so much for the content today and for the discussion within the chat box. All that the poll and the content have just inspired us to discuss. And you're right, this sort of discussion needs to be continued. And hopefully we can have some more sessions within our PhD support group and within the Doctoral Academy as well. And next week, we'll be taking a break from the SSS team. Shame they've been working so hard with us over the past couple of weeks. We will be having another guest speaker next week who will be discussing the imposter syndrome. Managing the imposter syndrome. So I'm sure this applies to everybody on this call, or very few of us are exempt from this imposter syndrome. I know I'm not speaking for myself alone. So I look forward to seeing you all again next week, Tuesday, 3:30, same space. The link should work. This is the same link that you used today. Also, for anybody that you know who may have missed the session, these sessions are recorded and posted onto the UKZN YouTube site. So you can remind others about the definitions of bullying as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for being involved today. And we look forward to seeing you again next week in the PhD support group sessions. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.